So my name is Dr. Rob Bell, sports psychology coach, author of Puke and Rally. It's not about the setback, it's about the comeback. And you're listening to the Shadows podcast.
Hello, everybody. Caleb Pearson here, host of the Ignite podcast. Ignite brings you professional, personal, and just all-around life skills development directly to you, the listener, on your own time without having to attend a class or a seminar in person. New torchbearers and episodes every Thursday with a new lesson and a new way to ignite your mind. Tune into Ignite on all major podcast platforms. Also follow us on Instagram at _Ignite podcast. And remember, as you journey into the shadows with Trip, you can't have the shadows without the light.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Shadows podcast. This week, we have the tragedy and triumph of Dr. Lonise Bias. In this episode, Dr. Bias celebrates the lives of her sons, Len and James, also known as Jay, and discusses her strength and perseverance. In case you're unfamiliar with their story, Len Bias was the 1984 Atlantic Coast Conference Tournament Most Valuable Player and the 1986 ACC Men's Basketball Player of the Year. He was an All-American forward for the University of Maryland. Legendary Duke men's basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski said, Len Bias and Michael Jordan were the two best players he's ever coached against. ESPN analyst Jay Billis said, he was Superman in a basketball uniform. He's one of the 10 players to win multiple ACC Player of the Year awards. He's the only player to average 25 points and 10 rebounds in the NCAA tournament since seeding began in 1979. And Boston Celtics owner Red Auerbach said if he could draft Len Bias, he would groom him to take Larry Bird's place. Then on June 17, 1986, Len was selected with the number 2 overall pick in the 1986 NBA draft by the reigning NBA champion Boston Celtics. He also agreed to a multi-year shoe deal with Reebok. However, 2 days later, June 19, 1986, one of the most tragic and shocking incidents to ever occur in the world of sports, Len Bias died from cardiac arrhythmia induced by cocaine overdose. He was 22 years old. And for the Bias family, tragedy struck again on December 5th, 1990, when Jay Bias was shot and killed. He was 20 years old. Today, we celebrate Dr. Bias and her son's stories here on the Shadows podcast, the tragedy and triumph of Dr. Lonise Bias. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Shadows podcast. I'm beyond honored to have with us today Dr. Lonise Bias. She's an internationally known motivational speaker, trainer, and consultant. Ma'am, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to join us here.
Well, Trip, I thank you for the opportunity to be on your program and to be a part of this historic event. Any opportunity that I have to be reflective in terms of my life and the lives of my sons, it's an honor because it gives them life. It still gives them life. So I thank you 35 years later.
Absolutely. It's my privilege to have you here, ma'am. So before we get going, I just want to say she is the mother of Len Bias, most, notable through, ESPN 30 for 30 documentary that was out there. For especially our younger audience, if you are not familiar with Len and the stuff he did on the court and just how amazing he was, Coach K even said that he's the best basketball player he's ever coached against. And he also coached against a number 23 from North Carolina as well. Mm-hmm. So, and if you want to watch a game, it's on YouTube, Maryland against my Tar Heels at the Smith Center, where he absolutely torched them and gave North Carolina actually their first loss at the Smith Center. Mm-hmm. So definitely go check it out. And like I said, younger audiences, he was an absolute beast on the court. You are a very powerful woman. You're a strong woman. Tell us about your upbringings. I'm curious how you were raised, who kind of shaped you into who you are today.
Well, I tell you, I am the daughter of, I have siblings, and I'm the oldest of my siblings. And as a young girl, when I focus on my career, my family has always been faith-based in terms of our belief system in God. And when I was a little girl, when I think about my public speaking now, I think back when I was in the first and second grade, when there were no microphones in school auditoriums. I would be sent home with a note on me telling my mother to dress me up for such and such a date because it was going to, they were having some type of program. And because of my speaking as a child, I wasn't afraid of audiences, and I could articulate once I had been told what to say. And I guess it was part of my gifting to speak. I was never afraid of audiences. And then when I was in high school, my government teacher told me that I would make an excellent public speaker. So I wasn't even aware of the gift. And, you're wondering, public speaker, what is he talking about? Kind of like you say something to the young people today and they what is that old head talking about? So I really didn't know what he was talking about. But as I continued in my faith and continued with my family, was married, and my husband and I, we had 4 children. And I started going more towards my faith. There were opportunities that opened up for me to speak, but I always had a burning desire to teach. It burned within me, but I always thought, because of my faith, it would be a Sunday school class or something like that. So raising my kids and moving forward with their lives, and my husband, and I mean, as a family, moving forth as a family and having our faith-based side, I've continued to grow in that area and not know. It really wasn't until Len's death. I had periodically been asked to be mistress of ceremony or something like that on different little programs, but it wasn't until I was kicked out of my comfortable position when Len died that I gave my first professional presentation at his memorial service. And that was when the mothers of the other University of Maryland, the mothers of the other players of the University of Maryland basketball team, men's basketball team, presented me with roses at his memorial service at Cole Field House. And I guess I gave my first presentation. And then as a part of that, there is a Christian TV station, I think called the 700 Club. And they asked me to come on and give my testimony of strength and the faith that I was still able to stand. But it was a lot of backstory or details that was preparing me for the cup that I had to drink from.
Yeah. And that's crazy too, because public speaking is something that majority of people, I see it in our course all the time, with the instructors coming through, people are afraid to get up and talk in front of a group. So it's a powerful tool to have.
Well, I love it. And especially when you believe in what you're saying.
Yes.
And that's part of how I have evolved over the past 35 years, because when I first started speaking, I would be asked to speak about drugs and alcohol, and it was always to kids. You lost your son and to drugs, and now we want you to be a part of drug prevention. So I did a lot of speaking about drugs and alcohol. But what happened was, when I was done speaking at whatever venue where there were students, mostly schools, the counselor or the principal would say, we have some students that would like to ask you questions. And they would put me in a room, and I would sit there for, I don't know how long, with kids lined up in the hall just wanting to ask me questions about life, things that had nothing to do with drugs and alcohol. I lost my grandfather and I loved him so much. And I wanted to, this is just what some of the kids would say, my mother and I don't get along, my parents don't, just everyday questions kids would have. And unbeknownst to me, that was the fire that I had been feeling all of those years. And here it is 35 years later. I am still a public speaker and still have hope in our young people, our families, and our communities, and even in this nation. I just understand the seasons of life and how things work. You have to be in the fire to try to figure out how to get through so you can show other people through. And this is a time where so many people are just surrounded with so much hopelessness and uncertainty. But as I share with people, the Bias family had their COVID-19 35 years ago when all of this came to us. And then 42 months later, my second son, Jay, was violently murdered. And how do you make it except through my faith in God? That's the only answer that I have. And that God blessed me when I thought that I was standing on Len's grave burying Jay. I thought I would lose my mind. I wanted to die. I didn't want to live. I didn't think it could be any more hope. Here I am, a person of faith, and you're promising me in the Bible that I have pearls when I have you, but I'm standing on one son's grave and burying another with dead leaves in my hand. So my faith had to be tested. Could I still believe? And I'm sitting here today because I continue to believe. As I teach all of the time, the only way you can get oil from an olive is to crush it. Juice from an orange is to squeeze it. You can't even get toothpaste out of the tube without putting pressure on it. And life is full of pressure, and life is full of seasons. And we have to take each season that is presented to us. It comes to stir up the non-marketable tools that we have within us to let the cream come to the top so that we can move forward. And I'm sure, though you're interviewing me, but just from a military perspective, that's what you do all of the time. Coaching and motivating people. It's something that we have to do in bringing the cream to the top to let you use the unused courage, the unused fortitude, everything that you have down within you that is not being used. So that's pretty much where my speaking career, how it evolved, but it came at a terrible price. If I could have said I'd rather go another way, I would not have chosen this way.
And definitely testament to your faith. Going back and watching the 30 for 30, how strong you were through that whole situation of losing Len. And it was I was telling you before you came on the air, my mother, who, she lost 2 husbands, lost a 14-year-old daughter. Wow. Even when I ask her, I'm talking to you today, she's like, oh, she's such a strong woman. But faith gets you through it, and that purpose. You mentioned you had 4 kids, Len, Eric, James, a third, which you mentioned was Jay, and Michelle. What was it like, that household of those 4?
As I said, life has seasons, and I kind of share my testimony in making 4 points. And we had the good life. We really had the good life. And the good life being that everything was not perfect. We didn't have perfect children. They were average students. We lived in a community, and all of them went to theater schools, the same elementary school, the same middle school, and they all graduated from the same high school. So we were in a beautiful little community that we loved, and we were there with other parents raising their children, which was a bit different then, because children went outside and they actually played, and they went to the rec center, and they went to arts and crafts, and they did so many beautiful things back during that time. And so we were engaged as a family. We loved our children very much, and they were a fun group. I had one daughter and 3 boys, and Len was a beautiful son and a beautiful big brother. He was a beautiful, beautiful big brother. And I was sharing with someone that interviewed me a couple of weeks ago, and if there are any parents that may be listening to this, I want to share this. I can remember back then, you could send children to the store, go to the 7-Eleven or run up to the store and get me this, that, or the other. And Len would come back, or he would be out, and he would bring back a stone that he had found. And he'd say, "Mom, isn't that so pretty? Look at that. Look at that." Or he would bring back a piece of like the cattails, something that looked like wheat, because where we lived, there was a little area that had like a little swamp around it, kind of marshy.
Yep.
And he would bring something home and say it was so beautiful. And I would look at it, and being a mother, yeah, that's beautiful. But today that would be a treasure to have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I would say to parents, whatever your children have or they have done, just treasure it. Just don't put it to the side. Don't put them to the side, and not think that activity is achievement, because, just take the time. We had a great family, and the kids loved each other, and they got together, and they would take up for each other. And we had a beautiful community in this. Jay and Len we had these little cassettes, the little flat cassettes. I don't even know if they still use them now. I'm an old head. I don't know what's new if it weren't for my grandchildren and some of the younger people like yourself around me to tell me what to do. But Len and Jay, and they would play, you won't believe this, they would act like they were Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali. They would act like they were announcers, and they would be downstairs in the basement putting the tape on. "Hello, this is Howard Cosell, and we have before us today." They would be playing like that.
Yep.
And this is when they were young, really not understanding or even experiencing their athleticism.
Yeah.
Who would they, because they weren't on little league teams. And, Len started in the little community intramural type little football team he was on. And then, of course, Jay played on the basketball team and the community basketball team. And then when Len went to middle school, that's where it appeared that he had a gifting to play sports and an interest to do so.
What was the recruiting process like as a parent, from a parent standpoint?
It could be overwhelming, because we received letters from everybody. But someone asked me not long ago, what did I remember about the recruiting process? And I said, Jimmy Valvano coming to my home.
Oh my gosh. I just talked to his daughter, so
yeah, and he was a treasure, really, really, really. But I remember that. his visit and him trying to get Len to recruit him to NC State. And I remember that. And it was overwhelming, but we got through it. I think when I look back 35 years later, I think about today, and today is so much help from so many mistakes that were made. You know what I mean? Let me put it this way, there is a progression of everything. So it's just like today, where normally we would be in each other's presence, we're on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
That's a progression. So today, there's more heightened awareness about collegiate sports and those types of things. And because of the heightened awareness today, there's some things that parents don't have to worry about. I mean, you're always a concern, but it's not a thing where people know that somebody is looking.
Yeah.
You know, it's always a camera there or something there, something is going on. So we have endured this hardship and made it through the good life. But like I said, in the good life, sometimes you can be complaining in the good life and think that your life isn't right until the nightmare comes. And then you realize, oh, I was in a good life.
Yeah.
You know, if this hadn't come. And then we move from the nightmare 1 to nightmare 2, and then we move into life after death. There is still life after death. And one of the other things that I would like to share is that I have learned, and I think we have to learn this as a nation, as a community, with all of the social concerns, so many things going on politically, socially. I mean, it's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
I think one of the things we have to remember is that we will all suffer loss, whether it's loss of a relationship, loss of something value, loss of a loved one. And we have to look at the losses and the pain that has come about. But what we have to grab a hold of is honoring what remains. You know what I mean? We can get so caught up in the minuses that we forget to look at all of the pluses that remain and how much we have to be grateful for.
Len and Jay, tell us some memories. Like, what are some of your like fondest memories that you still cherish to this day?
We have pictures of them with their Christmas football, Christmas football uniforms that we got them when they were like about, I guess Jay may have been 5 and Len may have been 10 or 11. I can't remember what the ages were. And when they looked at them later, as they got older, they called them, look at us with those suicide helmets on, you know, because
they're from like Sears or Penny's or something.
Yeah, suicide helmets. That's what
no protection.
No protection at all. And just the times that we spent together. I told you about the Howard Cosell, and we were just an average family. We were just an average family, very, 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 very close. Their dad taught them all how to play chess. And I remember they would get with their dad in the floor and say, come on, let's get dad. And all of them would jump on him. They would wrestle in the floor, you know. Their father would be with them. I think one time he thought that he was going to create the Jackson 5 again because he loves music and my daughter can sing. And so, you know, just family treasures like that. And always the holidays and family gatherings, because we had large families on both sides, and just them with their cousins and just with family, just lovely, lovely, lovely times.
You mentioned you're a grandparent. How does that feel?
Oh, that's supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. My oldest grandson is actually going to help me with something on social media this evening, hopefully. So
Well, nice.
I cried and I cried and I cried when Jay died, and just said what was going to happen to my two remaining children. You know, they've lost two brothers and they're just not going to make it. And how will my husband and I make it? And God has been so faithful and kept us through such difficult times. And so I have 6 grandchildren. And my oldest is 28. 3 of them, 2 of them have already graduated from college. I have another one coming out of college this year, and one that went to college and came back and said, well, you know, I just need a little bit more time. And 2 other granddaughters. One is a toddler and the other is a teenager.
So they keep you busy.
No, they keep their parents busy. They don't keep me busy. I'm the grandma. But of course, you know, grandmother and grandfather, we pop in wherever we can, you know, to help. You know, we do what we have to do. But we have been very blessed because when I thought it was all over and, you know, it was no light at the end of the tunnel, there was a light. And I tell anybody, no matter how dark it seems in this nation and how dark it seems, everything is working together for good. And these things that we're dealing with are opportunities to stir up the best in all of us and to help us to understand about unconditional caring, and just a wake-up call for what's going on around us, and to be, you know, engaged in life, not just you know, in interest that you have. There's a bigger picture of everything that's going on, and we can all go off in our little corner and say, don't bother me. But somewhere along the line, life will find you.
Yeah.
You can't hide from life. It will find you.
I want to ask you this question because this often gets brought up, and especially after the episode I did talking about my family experience. So many people don't know what to say, what to do to someone who is grieving, and oftentimes it's, you know, how do I handle grief? And everybody does it differently. But what advice would you give to someone that's looking to give advice to a grieving family member?
Well, let me share this with you. I'm also an ordained elder and teacher. And I eulogized my uncle last week, my father's only remaining brother. And I have to eulogize a cousin next week. And this morning, I just spoke with a relative whose nephew, 25 years old, died. So it's all fresh. I'm my own case study. You know, I don't have to ask anyone. And this is what I said to my cousin today. I said that, and I said it from a leadership position, doing this, being in the mix, and have done it a number of times. I just told her, remember who you are. This is life and we have to deal with it in the midst of the tears. And I told her, you're doing good. You're doing good. Just remember when you feel real weak because you've got to be there for them, you go and get your cry out, your scream and whatever, and you come back and try to help them as many times as you can. That's me, just from a teacher's perspective and some of the things that I do with people. But just everyday occurrences, you don't have to say anything except I'm just sorry. You know, you can't, it's nothing that you can say to take away the pain. The only thing you can say is there anything I can do to help you?
Yeah.
If you need me, call me. You know, can I fix you? Do you need any food? Here's a card, you know, with maybe some type of little stipend in it to help you with, or just the card saying, we're praying for you. And if I can just say this, with death being so prominent, you don't know what you're going to hear in the next minute today. Less is more.
Mm-hmm.
Less is more. Just say, be strong. I'm praying for you. You'll get through it. That's it. That's it. And that's why I tell people when we're dealing with grief, that this is not the time not to have time. We don't have time to hold grudges and to be mad with family members and not speaking and all of this type of nonsense, because it's so suddenly things are happening where people are transitioning so fast. And I have learned this: once they're gone, what you were mad about means nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely means nothing.
Yep.
You know, I spoke at the United States Air Force Academy out in Colorado Springs a couple of years ago. As a matter of fact, I still have the plaque on my wall. This one right
That's
here.
it.
That's it. I have it right there, and I still have all of their material. But they had a reception afterwards, and several leaders, officials attended the reception, and one lady told me that there was a man sitting next to her in the audience that said after he heard my presentation, he had forgiven somebody who had already died.
Wow.
Just from hearing the presentation, he was freed up to forgive. It doesn't matter. And I think today, because of the so much of energy that is not positive that is being sown today, you know, we just say, I don't have to deal with it. I don't want to. But as I said before, life will catch up with you, and you will have that knife in the heart. It's coming. It may not be the death of a loved one, but it's going to be something that will cause you to grieve, and you will have to deal with it. So this is not the time not to have time, and to understand that there are no perfect families, no perfect loved ones anywhere. All of us are becoming, all of us are work in progress, and everyone is just trying to find their way these days. So I only speak to just encourage people that I truly believe the best is yet to come, because I know what seems chaotic is bringing a heightened awareness to what it is that we need to do, and sending the millennials to another level. You know what I mean? An awakening of, you know, you're part of this, and we all have to work together. And as I mentioned in another presentation, it's not just all of the young people and all of the old, you know, the old, we don't need the old people. No, the young people don't know what they're doing. We have to have balance. We have to work it out together. So I believe in change, but grief is not going anywhere. And I tell people the first thing you have to do is, when I'm giving presentations, is come into agreement with life. Everybody is going to die. Stop thinking that your loved one is so special they're not going, or that you're not going. The greatest state in the United States of America is denial. You know, it'll always be someone else. And even with the death of my son, the death of so many other young people, however, whether it's drinking and driving or drugs or just doing whatever you do, speeding, it'll always be someone else. It'll never be me. And that is a lie. We are the next candidate if we do not pay attention and listen carefully. Pay attention, listen carefully, and guard your heart. Guard your heart. So coming into agreement and knowing, one thing that has helped me is that God does not bury love. Now, where my sons are buried, the love that I had for them is in my heart, but it's been multiplied for mankind, but more specifically for young people. So that love that people have for the one that they have to bury, I tell them to share with them, think of ways that you can build a memorial unto their memory. If it's nothing but a scholarship at a local school to help another child, you know what I mean? It doesn't even have to be drugs or about the cause. I mean, so many times we will say, there's so many organizations, well, if someone dies of cancer, you know, make it to the cancer, the organizations that deal with cancer, this, that, and the other. But if you lose a loved one any kind of way, just build or have a little memorial, $100 that you may give every year towards some kid going to school. That's how furthering and continuing their education is a little scholarship. You know what I mean? To if it makes sense to you, you know, just something in memory. And that memory, that seed that you give, it really helps heal you as you develop a little program or some activity around their life. It was not in vain.
Keeps their name alive.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
For younger listeners, we've talked about Len. He's first team All-American, two-time ACC Player of the Year. He was this is a really big deal, 1986 ACC Athlete of the Year, drafted number 2 overall by the Celtics. 30 plus years later, we're still sitting here talking about him. We're talking about Jay.
It's incredible. I can't believe it.
Well, if they could speak to you and tell you what they would want their legacy to be, the two of them, what do you think they would say?
I think that they would say that their mother is actually living their legacy. Their mother is actually living their legacy, because the pain of the loss of a child or children, the natural order has been reversed, where the child should be burying the parent is burying the child. And the pain, as I think you mentioned, someone that you had spoken to earlier today, said that about the multiplication of the word that he has spoken. Well, if people say, oh, I just can't imagine what it would feel like, it's 1,000 times worse. It is 1,000 times worse. So I don't have the strength or the wisdom. This is a mission, I believe, that was ordained by God, and only He has given me the strength to use the deaths of these 2 young men as an opportunity to encourage people, because this doesn't minimize other public speakers, not in the least, but anyone can stand up when everything is going well and say, do this and do that. But we're all being pushed into a place where we are going to become our own case studies in helping people to endure the hardships of life and the challenges of loss and the fight for peace within. It's a struggle for peace within when hardship comes and everything seems chaotic. It's a struggle for peace, to find your peace, you know. And I would share with people in all that is going on now. I have peace, and I have peace today because I learned about having peace during the deaths of my sons because of my faith. Not that I'm superwoman. No, sir, Bob.
You're close to it.
No, sir. If God moved this hand, I would be doing just what you think I should be doing, like your mom said. She's a strong woman. I don't know what to say to her. She would say, if God moved this hand, I would be just what people think. I should be cuckoo and out of my mind and saying what happened to me. I don't care about interviews. I don't care about talking about my sons. I don't want anything to do with anybody. I probably wouldn't have any grandchildren. My husband and I probably would not be together. And I mean, I just know without God, I would be nothing. So I just give him all the glory and the honor. I didn't like this mission. I didn't like this assignment. It was nasty. If he had told me this is what you're going to do, I would have said, get yourself another girl. But he knew my purpose in the earth, and me and my husband. And another thing that I share, that because of my belief system, I don't believe it's over. I believe in eternal life, and I believe that I will see my sons again. And that's a hope and a belief that I have. I'm keenly sensitive and aware of the fact that there are other faiths and religions of people that are listening, but I don't come to offend no man. I'm talking about my own belief system.
Ma'am, you're doing remarkable things. You're spreading an amazing message. You have a big purpose, and definitely keeping the names alive and well. And like I said, go do yourself a favor. Take some time out of your day. Put the apps and stuff aside and actually look up some Len Bias stuff on YouTube. And throughout the week on Instagram, the week of this episode, we're going to be posting stuff, celebrating what they've done during their time on this earth, and all the amazing things you're doing as well. So, ma'am, I cannot thank you enough for taking time here to be with us today.
Well, I have a podcast as well, and it's called BSpeaks Life on Instagram. And the episodes are on Facebook, on my Facebook page, Dr. Lonise Bias.
Okay, so we will have all that on there as well. So definitely go give her some love over there. Check it out. And yeah, for anything else, ma'am, other than the Facebook page and your podcast, where can they find out more about you?
Oh, my website. My Facebook is Lonise Bias, and my website is drlonisebias.com.
Yes, ma'am. Well, ma'am, thank you very much for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you, Tripp, for the opportunity and pressing through everything you had to press through to get it done. We got it done. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and take care.
All right, everyone. We want to send a special thanks to Dr. Bias for taking time to join us here on the Shadows podcast. Next week, for our final installment of the Rebound series, we have the Chronicles of Shamond Williams. Shamond talked to us about not being recruited to playing and setting records for the men's basketball team at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He also talks about his first encounter with legendary head coach Dean Smith, and then graduating and hearing his name called during the NBA draft. We've also announced all of our guests through the month of April on our Facebook and Instagram pages, so make sure you go and check those out as well. Also, leave us some feedback on your favorite podcast platform. Let us know how we're doing. Folks, that's all the time we're going to have for this week here on the Shadows Podcast.